Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
The heat was exhausting, but as usual, there was a crowd at the open village market on Saturdays. People were browsing, bargaining, and arguing, all the while managing to chat about life. Almost everyone in the area knew each other, and if they didn't, where else but here could they get acquainted? But one person that everyone in the village knew for sure was Nora. Nora was a well-known figure, even legendary, you could say. A 40-year-old widow and mother of many children enjoyed a drink and a good time, never giving up hope of getting married again. There were plenty of legends circulating in the village about her adventures. If the traders and buyers ever ran out of topics for conversation and had discussed the age and biography of the rabbit carcasses on the stalls from every angle, they would move on to the latest escapades of Nora. And there was always something to talk about. Nora seemed to deliberately stir the pot, getting herself into new troubles. But she had an amazing knack for coming out unscathed, no matter what kind of mess she found herself in. Some even said she had 9 lives, like a cat. It was just a matter of time before her luck ran out. Today, the local gathering had Nora's latest childbirth on the agenda. Can you believe it? Some people don't have children at all, and she's having them one after another. Yeah, how many does she have now? The 8 or 9? Let me think. Maria, Valerio, Laura. Oh no, it's definitely the 9th. She's like tireless rabbit. And what is she planning to do with this horde? They're living in rags and going hungry. The oldest one is selling eggs instead of going to school, and she still wants more. Yes, you're right. And where are Child Protective Services looking? People like her shouldn't have kids. People gossiped. Everyone in the small village was eager to discuss the unfortunate woman, except for a slim girl with golden hair standing behind the egg stall. She was Maria, Nora's daughter. When snippets of conversation about her mother reached her ears, she would blush, hunch her shoulders, and lower her eyes to the ground. Sometimes, the gossipers, seeing how embarrassed Maria was, felt sorry for her and changed the topic. But sometimes, on the contrary, they grew even more curious. Maria, come on, tell us, who was born this time, a brother or a sister? The plump auntie asked unabashedly, counting money for a tray of eggs. A brother, Maria replied softly, almost in a whisper, and even attempted to smile politely, but it didn't come out well. I see, the customer scoffed disdainfully. So, how many brothers do you have now? 4, Maria replied quietly. Will you get a child allowance? The nosy lady asked sternly. I don't know, probably, Maria replied. She doesn't even know. The woman snorted and tossed the money onto the counter. Give me my change. Stop saying, I don't know. You're just like your mother, you never know anything. All she's good at is having children, one after the other. After counting the change, Maria handed it to the customer and said, Thank you, please come again, trying not to react to her sarcasm. I'll come, where else can I go? I don't even have my own chickens, the lady replied, going off to harass other vendors. Maria let out a sigh. You're really something, Maria, she said, hearing a friendly Dominica's voice from her neighboring stall. I wouldn't have been able to handle that, I would have snapped back. But you always stay composed and polite. I don't get offended by the truth, Maria replied bitterly. I love my mother and my brothers and sisters too. But I know my mother is a fool, and she lives recklessly. Everything was fine when my father was around, but when he was gone, a normal life went with him. My mother started fooling around, always afraid she couldn't manage without a man in the house. She said children needed a father and were always looking for a replacement. She went hunting for men, she always had some admirers, it didn't work out with one, it didn't work out with another. And with someone, it seemed to be going well, but as soon as my mother got pregnant, he'd vanish like the wind. And the more children we had, the lower her standards became. She got involved with alcoholics. Luckily, she's not a heavy drinker, but if there's stress, as she puts it, she starts drinking. In the end, we have neither a father nor, essentially, a mother. Maria, I heard you did well in school, didn't you? Dominica interrupted the sad story. I did. But I couldn't finish school the way I wanted to. I barely made it through middle school. I started skipping, so I fell behind, Maria confessed. Why did you start skipping? Dominica asked sympathetically. It's simple, there was nothing to wear, Maria sighed. Sometimes kind neighbors would give us things. For example, their daughters had outgrown their shoes. I'd go to school, and those girls would laugh. Look, Maria's wearing my old shoes. I'd worn them out last year, was planning to throw them away, and she, found a use for them. Did I want to wear those shoes again? Of course not. And I couldn't bear listening to the gossip about my mother. Yes, Maria, you've had a tough life, Dominica sighed. But what about college? You could have gone to study and gotten a profession, right? Oh, Dominica. Maria waved her hand. College? Who would take care of the kids? My mother and her alcoholic friends? And Valerio has been acting up lately too. We need to keep an eye on him, he's a handful. And the younger ones? Sometimes, my mother forgets to feed them properly, but she never forgets to put on makeup and do her hair, that's sacred to her. She believes she'll find her prince. It's a good thing there's a daycare, it helps. But without me, she won't take the kids there. And how can I tutor the middle ones? And now there's a baby too. Oh no, Dominica, college means going to the city, and I'm tied to the family here. You'll wither away here, Maria, Dominica said, shaking her head. You need to leave. You're a young girl, beautiful, and smart. You should be on the catwalk, not selling eggs. What are you saying? Maria smiled sadly, though it was clear that she appreciated the compliment. Why not? You're tall and slender. Delicate, with expressive eyes and a doll-like face. Oh, I'd advise you to leave your mother's nest and let her grow up for once. She knows she can rely on you for everything, and she's relaxed as if she's not the mother but you. It won't work out, Maria waved her hand. Nothing will, she said thoughtfully, and she sighed again. Finally, the workday came to an end. Maria gathered the remaining goods and drove them to the warehouse, where she received her payment for the day and received mocking congratulations on her new little brother. She thanked them, pretended not to notice the irony, and barely held back her anger. How can they not understand that I'm not to blame for any of this? If I could, I would live differently, Maria pondered on her way home. Her mother would be discharged tomorrow, and today she needed to tidy up the house. At least Gabriella should be able to handle the children. Gabriella was only 10 years old, almost 7 years younger than Maria. They had different fathers, but were similar in both looks and character. Gabriella could always be relied upon. She would clean up, feed the kids, and watch over them. But it was a shame to burden such a young girl with adult responsibilities. After all, she should still be playing with dolls. Maria felt guilty that she was stealing her little sister's childhood. But what could she do? Her childhood had been with her father, and then it all ended. She had to work. Gabriella, is everything okay? Maria called out from the doorway. You're finally back. A disheveled girl rushed out of the room and immediately threw her arms around her sister. I'm so tired, and my back hurts from carrying the little ones. She complained. Oh, my poor thing. Maria exclaimed. Rest now, I'll take over. Where's Laura, by the way? Where else could she be? Down by the river. Gabriella replied with a hint of resentment. And she didn't help you at all? Maria asked, even though she had already known the answer. Nope, Gabriella said. Well, I'll have a word with her, Maria frowned. But Michaela helped me. Gabriella laughed, grabbing the shaggy black and white dog that had come out to greet Maria along with the girl. The dog was completely mixed breed but large and good-natured. She grinned widely at Maria and tried to give her a kiss on the nose, but the girl skillfully dodged it. "Oh, Michaela, you silly thing, leave me alone. Your whole face is greasy, but you're trying to kiss me." She had some soup. "I made it really hearty," Gabriella boasted. "Good job, that's more than can be said for some people," Maria praised. "So, where's Sylvia?" "Sylvia is out somewhere too," Gabriella complained. "Well, don't worry, it's her turn to babysit tomorrow, and the day after that, Laura won't be able to avoid it either, and you'll get to rest," Maria promised. "Indeed," Gabriella cheered. "All right, let's go have lunch. What did you cook today?" "I'm starving, my stomach is sticking to my spine." "Michaela, can't you see I'm busy?" "You clingy dog." Maria and Gabriella entered the room. Their house was quite spacious, one of 3 in the entire complex. There was also a vestibule, a veranda, and a kitchen. Once, everything had been cozy, well-kept, and brand new. Their father had invested a lot of time and effort in setting up the house. But now, it had all fallen into disrepair. The furniture was old, the house hadn't been renovated, the wallpaper was faded and peeling, and the whitewash had long since turned gray. Maria sometimes attempted minor repairs, but much was impossible due to the abundance of small children their mothers seemed to give birth to almost every year. Sometimes, they didn't want the smell of paint, sometimes they didn't have the money, and sometimes they simply felt too discouraged to do anything. Children's toys were scattered everywhere. Many were old and broken. Worn-out children's clothing was piled up untidily on the sofa. Maria and Gabriella periodically tried to tidy up. Occasionally, Laura and David would help if their consciences were pricked. Sometimes, their mother would also remember her responsibilities and start cleaning. But for the most part, Gabriella and Maria maintained order in the house. "The little ones will wake up soon, and Pablo is out somewhere playing soccer," Gabriella reported. Pablo was already 7 years old. You couldn't put him down for a nap during the day, and he made so much noise that it was better for him to be outside playing. Maria sat down at the table, and her younger sister began to fuss around her. She placed a bowl of soup in front of her and cut some bread. "Eat, it's still warm." Delicious," Maria praised, playfully showing a thumb up with her left hand. Gabriella beamed with pleasure. Yes, she tried hard. The soup was simple noodles, but many of her peers couldn't even manage that. Yet she had managed to feed the whole horde. "All right, Gabriella, you can rest now. I've taken over the shift, as they say. I'll finish eating, and then I'll tidy up, and tomorrow I'll go pick up Mom from the maternity ward. Oh, I can't wait to meet my little brother. I wonder what he'll be like." Gabriella dreamily rolled her eyes. "Yeah, what will he be like?" "Probably just like all the others, blue-eyed, chubby, and small," Maria replied wearily. "No, come on, Maria. You can't say that. He's special, just like all of us, each with our own uniqueness." "Well, we've got a whole bag of uniqueness in our family," Maria joked with bitterness. The little ones began to wake up, and Maria, after hastily finishing her soup, went to take care of them. The rest of the day was filled with chores, and by evening, the young woman was exhausted. She had just managed to lay her head on the old feather pillow, which had become stiff with time, when she immediately fell asleep. She slept soundly, only the cries of the babies woke her up in the middle of the night. There, my little ones. Calm down." The 1.5-year-old twins, Paulina and Olivia, stood in their wooden crib, where it was already getting cramped for the 2 of them, crying loudly. Either they both woke up at once, or they woke each other up. Soon, they would wake up little Dorothea, who was 5 years old but had only recently started sleeping through the night without waking up. Maria gave them some water and put them back to sleep. She had 2 more hours before she had to get up. Should she take a short nap or just stay awake? She decided to close her eyes and snooze for a while, just 5 minutes. She had barely closed her eyes when a bright ray of sunshine pierced through her thin eyelids. Had 2 hours passed by so unnoticed? There was no rest. Struggling to get out of bed, Maria went about her usual tasks. "Oh, I do so much, and in the end, dirt and chaos are everywhere, and my efforts go unnoticed," she sighed. They needed to come to the city by 12 to pick up Mom and the newborn brother. Thanks to Pancho, he agreed to help. He was a kind man, an old-school retiree. He had worked as a tractor driver all his life. He had an old orange car, which he intended to use to take Maria to the city to get her mother and bring them back. It was a half-hour drive to the city, but they decided to leave in advance. The thing was, the car had a tendency to let its owner down at the most inconvenient times. It could suddenly stall and then, just as unexpectedly, start up again and go. "Maria, can I come too?" Gabriella begged. "Oh, Gabriella, it would be more convenient for me with Laura. She's older and can help if anything happens." "All right," Maria replied, apologizing. "It's not a big deal. I'd rather go to the river." Laura smirked. "Mom isn't giving birth for the first or last time. It's not interesting anymore. So, Gabriella, you can go if you want." Maria looked at Laura disapprovingly, but she didn't try to persuade her. Why bother? If she didn't want to, then she shouldn't have. "Get in, Gabriella, let's go." "Great. I even picked some wildflowers for Mom in the morning," the girl exclaimed and brought a handful of field flowers from the barn. "Why so many?" Maria laughed. "Well, all right, let's go. Mom will be pleased." "Well, what's taking you so long, you chatterboxes? Hop in the car, let's go." Pancho kindly grumbled, inviting the girls into the car. "Let's go." Gabriella laughed and hopped into the car. The door slammed shut. Maria settled into the hard seat and, looking out the window, suddenly saw Valerio's sullen face. He glared at his sisters as they got into the car. Maria waved at him, but he didn't respond. He continued to stand there, his hands in the pockets of his faded sweatpants. Poor Valerio, he's so unhappy. What's on his mind? Maria wondered. Valerio was her full brother, both from their father and mother, which was unusual in their large family. Yet they felt like strangers to each other. Maria didn't feel a kinship connection with him, and lately he had distanced himself from the family, disappearing somewhere. It seemed that only Maria was concerned about this. Their mother couldn't care less, and the rest of the family members were happy when Valerio didn't show up at home and didn't torment the little ones, who irritated him. He was always sullen and never said a kind word. She started up, "My dear." Pancho interrupted Maria's thoughts with a cheerful voice. "I can tell from the sound that we'll make it there just fine. At least to the maternity ward. But I can't guarantee the way back. You just do your best, Pancho. I wouldn't want to stand on the road with a newborn baby either." Maria smiled. "Don't worry. I've had a word with this old lady. Everything will be fine." They arrived without any adventures and parked a little way from the maternity ward because cars weren't allowed on the premises. Maria knew the rules well. It wasn't her first time here to pick up her mother. "All right, Gabriella, let's go. Pancho, stay here. Just don't smoke in the car," Maria requested sternly. "Oh, come on, Maria, I understand that there'll be a little one in the car." Gabriella couldn't wait to meet their mother and the new baby, as she put it. "I can already imagine how cute he is," she exclaimed in anticipation as they entered the hospital lobby. Their mother was already standing near the exit with a bag and a bundle in her arms, casting a gloomy look at the happy, large family of her roommate, who was posing for photos in front of a wall with a stork painted on it. The woman was dressed festively and held a huge bouquet of flowers. Her husband was standing joyfully beside her, trembling with excitement as he cradled their newborn daughter in a pink lace blanket, his eyes sparkling with happiness. The elated relatives surrounded the young parents, who were clearly delighted to welcome the new addition to the family. Nora, exhausted, poorly dressed, and lonely, looked pitiful in comparison, like a beggar with a doll instead of a child at a major train station. Inside Maria, there was a pang of sorrow for her mother and for herself. She used to be so beautiful, tall, and full-figured. But now? She had damaged her hair with cheap dye, turning it into a rag. Her face, already not so fresh, had worsened after recent childbirth, slumping and getting plumper. But her lips, on the contrary, had paled and sunk in. Mommy!" Gabriella exclaimed. She was the only one who didn't feel uncomfortable and was simply happy to see her mother and her little baby brother. "You finally showed up," Nora grumbled, simultaneously upset and relieved that she would finally leave the hospital. "What took you so long?" "Mom, you said to come at 12, remember? We even came early." Maria tried to justify herself. "Yes, they asked me earlier. Some big shot is visiting the maternity ward, and they're cleaning all the rooms. People like me get kicked out. Anyway, let's go." "Nora, are you going to take pictures too?" The midwife asked mockingly, having just received flowers and chocolates from the happy family that couldn't seem to finish their photo session in front of the stork. "Next time," Nora retorted defiantly and headed towards the exit at a brisk pace. "Thank you," Maria said quietly to the midwife, and then, realizing that she had to do something, she quickly picked up a small bouquet of wildflowers from the pile and handed it to her as a token of appreciation. She didn't have any money for even a chocolate bar, and leaving without anything was awkward. The midwife accepted the flowers indifferently, even disdainfully, giving Maria a condescending look. Maria felt uncomfortable and hurried to leave the maternity ward, following her mother. Pancho was standing by the car and hadn't smoked, just as he promised. "Oh, Nora, did everything go well? Good for you. You're quite a woman. With you around, we shouldn't be afraid of the demographic pit." "Oh, come on, you old buzzard, stop teasing me," Nora grumbled. "I'm not teasing, just stating the facts." Pancho smiled. "What will you name the little boy?" "Fernando," Nora replied briefly. "Oh, what a name!" Pancho exclaimed in surprise. "It's beautiful but rare. Nowadays, boys don't get names like that. No matter what name I chose, some idiot was named like it. So, I had to pick a rare one from the old names," Nora explained. "All right, let's go already. Start this jalopy." "Quiet." Pancho panicked. "She can hear everything, she might get upset." Pancho stroked the steering wheel and started the car. It cleared its throat and, grumbling reluctantly, moved off the spot. "Mommy, can we see him now?" Gabriella finally dared to ask. "Well, what's there to see? He's just a baby," Nora replied indifferently, but she still folded back the edge of the blanket that was hiding the newborn's wrinkled face. The baby peacefully slept and resembled a wax doll. "He's adorable." Gabriella smiled and, hugging her sister, asked, "Maria, are you happy?" "Very much so," the young woman replied ironically. But Gabriella didn't catch on to that. She was just happy that she had a baby brother and that her mother was back with them. And now they would go home, have sweet coffee, play with the little ones, and meet the lively Michaela. And they hoped for the car not to stall on the way. Surprisingly, they made it home without any mishaps. The little bird didn't let them down. Nora got out of the car and immediately handed the baby to Maria. "I thought you'd be holding him forever, probably even taking care of him," Maria remarked ironically. "Oh, come on. I carried him for 9 months, and in the maternity ward, I was on call around the clock with no complaints. So now it's your turn. Mom needs to rest and catch up on sleep. You know what it's like in the maternity ward, doctors are always bustling around. One minute they're examining me, the next, Fernando, and then the orderlies burst in to clean the floors, and the neighbors were always chattering away. It was impossible to get any sleep," Nora complained in response. "I understand. Go get some rest, I'll manage just fine." "It's not my first time," Maria replied, taking the baby from her mother. "I guess it'll be even more fun now," Maria thought bitterly. But soon she realized that the new baby wasn't bringing too many changes to her already hectic life. And it seemed her mother was tired of amorous escapades and frequent pregnancies. She decided to put off the partying for now. Or maybe they had just run out of men. Even prickly Laura softened a bit when her mother started cooking regular meals. The girl began helping around the house, although she still disappeared for long stretches. Maria had waved her off, just as she did with Valerio, which was even harder to deal with. Unpleasant rumors were circulating about him, saying that he was involved in something risky. And where there's risk, trouble isn't far behind. Maria was deeply concerned about Valerio, and as it turned out later, not without reason. If only her mother had come down to earth for a moment, if only she had tried to influence her son a bit, they might have avoided the disaster that happened to the entire family later on. But it was Nora. After being a somewhat decent mother for a while, by September, she had relaxed. "Mom, things were actually going okay. You seem to be improving. What's going on with you now?" Maria tried to talk to Nora when she, having slept in until noon, turned on the old TV and, barely blinking, watched some silly program. The interference on the screen, like the constant disruptions in her life, didn't bother her in the slightest. She tried to make out the picture through the trembling wrinkles, not thinking about fixing the antenna. Or even buying a new TV, as long as she had to work for it. But the kind of work Nora was offered seemed too dirty and cheap to her. "I won't work for peanuts," Nora said. "But I do work." Maria objected. "And that's your business. You're young, work. But I have health issues, and I have young children." Once again, Nora didn't react to her daughter's comments. "Well, she talked and talked, so what?" "Mom, at least talk to Valerio. What's happening with him?" Maria pleaded. "Well, what can I do? He's a healthy young man, 16 years old. He should be responsible for himself." Unfortunately, Valerio didn't have a role model, a man who could advise and guide him on how to live and what to do. Someone should get him into some kind of work. He was the older brother. He was supposed to set an example for the younger ones. But no, Valerio was clearly a lost soul. Valerio's not going to end up well. Dominica, who, as usual, was selling her goods next to Maria at the market, poured oil on the fire. "You'll see." "Oh, stop." Maria snapped at her. "I can't stand it." They somehow managed to make it to October. The cold wind ruthlessly stripped the trees of their golden leaves, and Maria thought about how soon the frost would hit and how cold it would be standing at the market. But there was no choice. She had to support the family. Her mother was lazy. The older children were barely getting by and skipping school. Only Gabriella was trying, but she also had to miss classes. Not for friends' sake, but for the sake of the younger ones. The issue with daycare was still unresolved. The caregiver was always complaining that Olivia and Paulina were always unkempt and Dorothea misbehaved. And on top of that, Nora would start arguments with the daycare director, thinking that the best defense was a good offense. Maria was constantly plagued by a sense of shame for her family, especially for her mother. Shame became Maria's constant companion, weighing her down. It made her gaze dim and her shoulders slump lower and lower. Selling at the market became unbearable, with Maria tensing up with every new customer, expecting to hear an unpleasant question directed at her. But it turned out that these problems were just a rehearsal for the real tragedy. One day, Valerio came home beaten up. Maria might not have paid attention to his return or noticed his condition. Her brother came and went as he pleased and never reported anything to anyone. If Nora suddenly decided to involve their mother, he might have been disrespectful. But Maria immediately noticed the bloodstains on the floor. The girl ran to his corner behind the wardrobe, where he had set up his personal space. There were his bed and his belongings. Seeing his condition, Maria gasped. Valerio had been brutally beaten, Blood was streaming down his face, his nose was bleeding, his lips were split, and one of his eyes was swollen shut. Of course, he had gotten into fights with other boys before, but this was clearly something different. "Valerio, what happened to you?" Maria worried. "Get out, it's none of your business." Valerio snapped. "How is it? Who did this? We need to go to the police." "I said, stay out of it." Valerio rudely rebuffed her. "Fine, do as you wish." Maria angrily responded and went to sleep on her old couch. "I'm tired of everyone and their problems," she grumbled to herself. But that was just the beginning. Valerio started disappearing from home for long periods. He had left before, but only for a couple of days at most. Now, he was gone for weeks, and it was already getting cold. Where was he spending his nights, and who was he hanging out with? Maria pressured her mother, and finally, Nora spoke with him. However, their conversation yielded nothing. Valerio brushed her off just like he had with Maria. She was no longer an authority figure for him, that ship had long sailed, and her maternal authority had permanently lost its weight. One day, the local police officer came to Nora's house, and that's when Maria realized that Valerio had gotten into very serious trouble. The officer explained that Valerio had been caught stealing in the city and that it wasn't his first offense. Now that he had a criminal record, it was a mark on his biography. "Why didn't you watch him?" Nora began to berate Maria once the officer had left, slamming the door behind him. "So it was me who didn't?" Maria protested. "Who's the mother here? You or me? Aren't you ashamed?" Nora shouted. "I have a breastfed baby and 7 more to take care of at the stalls. You could have helped your mother by taking on some of the responsibilities." "Oh, stop it." Maria barely managed to restrain herself from responding rudely to her mother. But quarreling wouldn't help the situation. Her brother was in prison. Next, he had to go to a correctional facility, and his life was effectively over. Maria and Nora agreed to visit Valerio and went to check on him. He was glad to see them, but very embarrassed. It was clear he was ashamed of himself. "I'm sorry," Valerio said somberly. "You idiot." Nora immediately began, but Maria tugged at her sleeve. "Valerio, how are you holding up here? Are they treating you okay?" Maria asked sympathetically. "It's fine. They treat me okay, if you can put it that way. But I'm scared about what lies ahead." "Valerio, maybe we can prove you're not guilty. Maybe there's a way to influence the trial somehow," Maria suggested. "No, they caught me red-handed. There's nothing I can do now." "Why did you do this?" "We don't live in luxury, but there's always food on the table, and I tried so hard." Maria scolded her brother. "And I tried. Didn't I?" Nora said immediately. Valerio remained silent, then he managed to say, It just happened. I'm sorry." It was clear that Valerio wanted to say something more, but couldn't. He cast furtive glances at his mother and sister, but he couldn't open up to them. Tears welled up in his eyes. "Don't worry, ladies. He might meet someone like Raphael in the correctional facility who can turn him into a better person. They have educators there. Why are you so down?" Pancho, who had offered to drive them to the city in his car once again, tried to cheer up the passengers. However, he failed to lift their spirits. Both women were in tears. They felt sorry for Valerio, for themselves, and for the life that hadn't turned out as planned. Valerio's arrest briefly sobbed Nora up, and she made an effort to be a responsible mother again. She tried to cook, take care of the children, and keep their clothes clean. But Maria knew it wouldn't last. Nora's episodes of being a good mother were sporadic, and they never led to anything substantial. She would eventually revert to her old ways of partying and blame Maria for not helping her enough. Indeed, after a brief period of trying to be responsible, Nora turned to alcohol once more. "Mom, what are you doing? We're short on money." Valerio needs money for packages in the correctional facility. The kids need so many things, and you're spending it on booze. Snap out of it. Maria scolded her. Maria, I just had some beer. Don't I have the right to relax? Nora slurred her words. Beer? Mom, are you out of your mind? You have young children. I know that a little beer is just the beginning for you. Each day, you'll need more and more. Oh, come on. Nora grew angry. I'm not an alcoholic. I know my limits. Maria rolled her eyes. That was enough for her. She decided to quit everything and move to the capital to become a model, as Dominica had foretold. She wondered what it would take to achieve that. Maria headed to the kitchen to make some coffee. She poured coffee into a cup, skipped the sugar, and sat on her old stool. Michaela, whom Gabriella wouldn't allow outside at night due to her worry, lay her head on Maria's lap. The dog gazed into her face, and her large brown eyes seemed to understand everything. Michaela, Maria said, stroking the furry hound. Why is life so complicated? Why can't it be simple? She asked the dog, but Michaela merely licked her hand and wagged her tail. Suddenly, Michaela became alert, perking up her ears and turning her head towards the window. Listening carefully, she suddenly jumped up with a deafening bark and rushed to the door. Maria, calm the dog down. What's wrong with her? Nora grumbled from the other room. Wait, Mom, there's someone in our yard, Maria replied cautiously. Who could come at such a time? Nora wondered. I don't know, I'll check, Maria said, getting up from her stool. An uneasy feeling settled in her heart. Who could it possibly be? Nobody usually came to their house, especially not this late. Maria put on her jacket, nudged the agitated Michaela aside, and left the dog to bark inside. Who's there? Maria asked sternly. The yard was dark, and at first, it seemed like there was no one there. But the persistent barking of the dog continued. Suddenly, someone grabbed Maria's wrist from behind, squeezing it painfully. Ow! Maria cried out. Are you Maria? Someone asked, and his voice sounded hoarse and unpleasant. Yes, she stammered, frightened. All right, listen up, Maria. Your brother owes us $300,000. If you don't pay it within 2 days, things won't go well for you. Are you out of your mind? What $300,000? Who owes it? Valerio? He does, sweetie, the voice continued. He gambled it away and had some bad luck. And you won't have any luck either, neither your little sisters nor your little brothers. And your mom won't have any luck either if you don't find the money. What are you talking about? Are you insane? Even if I sell this house, nobody will pay $300,000 for it. Then, Maria, you won't have a house at all. The person threatened. Think about where you're going to get the money. Your brother will tell us where to find him. The invisible interlocutor, who was breathing unpleasantly close to Maria's ear and gripping her wrist tightly, finally let her go. I don't have any money, and I won't have any, Maria firmly replied. Then, you'll see, the menacing guest promised. What? Maria didn't understand. But judging by the footsteps, the man headed towards the gate, indicating that the conversation was over. Maria didn't bother to pity her mother while keeping the reasons for the uninvited visitor's visit hidden from her. She told Nora about the unpleasant demand this guy made, but Nora had no useful advice to offer. She only expressed her outrage, cursed life out loud, and then went to sleep. Maria, on the other hand, couldn't sleep at all. She tossed and turned in bed until morning, her mind racing, trying to figure out where to get the money. However, no ideas came to her. Maria decided to call her brother and personally ask him about this debt he had incurred. So, you gambled? Maria hissed into the phone, and when she heard frightened Valerio's voice, it was evident he was about to cry. I did, he admitted. While I was cleaning the floors, cooking for you all, sold eggs, and taking care of the children. You were having fun, gambling?" Maria said it in disbelief. "Please forgive me," Valerio whispered quietly. And Maria heard in his voice those familiar tones she hadn't heard in a long time. In that moment, she both loved and hated her brother. "You're scum, Valerio." She yelled and hung up the phone, then burst into tears. He was a wretch, an absolute wretch. And she was miserable too. It would never work out for her, it never had, because she was born into the wrong family. They would all drag her down, starting with her mother and ending with her endless children. Maria once again felt the urge to leave everything behind and go far, far away. And to walk on a runway. In the evening, Maria realized she was anxious and afraid of the visit from yesterday's guest. But he didn't come. Her mother was drinking beer again, so Maria didn't want to interact with her at all. After putting the children to bed with Gabriella's help, Maria lay down herself, but she couldn't fall asleep for a long time. She listened attentively. No one came this time. However, the next evening, Michaela barked again, agitated. There were already 3 guests, or maybe more. It was too dark to see. "Have you prepared the money?" the familiar voice asked. "No," Maria calmly replied, and she immediately received a blow to her back. Caught off guard and in pain, she folded in half and sat on the ground. She didn't even scream, she just tried to regain her composure and catch her breath. "Scum. You are all scum," was swirling in her head. Someone grabbed her hair so painfully that Maria even lifted herself up, clutching her stomach and overcoming the pain. "Haven't you realized yet that we're serious about this? No one's going to mess around with you, that's not why we're here. So, find the money quickly. $500,000. The voice said menacingly. "What?" Maria whispered. "Exactly what you heard. Your mother over there is giving birth. Like on an assembly line, she can share the benefits and child support." The voice continued. "What benefits? What child support? She always has problems with documents. She can't even properly register anything. You came to the wrong place. I can't even give you 10, that's all we have. And you keep asking for $300,000, and now 500. We don't have that kind of money. We're not interested in your whining. We'll be waiting for the money tomorrow. If you don't bring it, you'll regret it." Maria didn't even have a chance to find out who these bandits were. Reporting to the local police officer wouldn't make sense either. He was a crooked cop. After the uninvited guests left, Maria got up from the frozen ground and walked back home. She was scared now. She realized that these people were capable of anything. She needed to hide her brothers and sisters, but where? "Mom, we're in trouble. We need to hide the children," Maria whispered softly, leaning over Nora, who was lying on the couch, trying not to let the older ones hear and get scared. "What happened?" Nora didn't understand. "Valerio owes money, and we have to pay them," Maria replied shortly. "What money? What are you talking about? We've never had any. Who does he owe, and how much?" Nora couldn't believe it. "He owes them to some kind of gangster. He lost money gambling. At first, they asked for $300,000, and now it's $500. Maria sobbed. "They've lost their minds. Don't they know that a widow with so many children can't possibly have that kind of money? Even if we had it, I wouldn't give it to them. Look what they want." Nora scoffed. "Mom, these are dangerous people. Haven't you realized it yet? They might even kill us." The young woman exclaimed. "Don't talk nonsense. Will it be good if we die? We can't even pay them when we're alive and dead. We'd be useless," Nora said indifferently. "Mom, you've become so numb. You don't want to know anything. You're just glued to your TV. They might kill us all, and you'll remember my words then," Maria replied. Maria went to the kitchen, sat down at the table, and stared blankly at a spot. Soon her mother came in. "Well, what's bothering you?" she muttered, sitting down next to her daughter. "Mom," Maria began with hope. "You have so many male acquaintances. I mean, maybe someone could help, right? They're not the people to rely on. They've long since disappeared, dissolved into the past, as if they never existed. And what can they do? They're destitute." "Mom, you sure know how to choose people to be friends with," Maria sighed. "Don't judge me, you'll see when you're my age, then you'll look at yourself," Nora grumbled. It was decided to go to bed and think about what to do next. Maria couldn't sleep, she tossed and turned all night. In the morning, she went to Pancho for advice. "What can I do for you, Maria? I don't have any money, and there's nowhere to hide the kids. My sister lives in the capital, an old lady all alone. She only has a small room. Where can you put the kids?" Pancho pondered while Maria stood nearby, her head down, tears streaming down her face. It was very frightening. "Pancho, why don't you send them to Estefania?" his wife offered. "To Estefania?" The elderly tractor driver was surprised. "Why not? She has a farm, cows, and a warm house. She'll even put the kids to work. Don't worry, Maria, she's a kind woman. She's my cousin. She lives 100 kilometers from here, in a small village. The ones who don't want to leave are still there. Estefania will be among them. Just don't let her take the youngest one, you understand, too much trouble with him. But she'll find someone to help with the twins. She has some old lady friends there, they'll keep an eye on them." "I don't even know," Maria began. "Don't be afraid. She won't take any money from you, she'll make do. And she'll enjoy taking care of the kids. She's already raised generations of them, they're always bringing her more. She has her own grandchildren too, they'll probably come in the summer. Winter is coming, but don't worry, her house is warm, everyone will be fine." "That's a good idea." Pancho brightened up. "I'll take them, but Maria, you won't fit in there. So, Laura, you're a little bandit, we'll go with the older ones. The main thing is for our old jalopy not to let us down." The wife chuckled and immediately received a stern look from Pancho. "What are you saying? You shouldn't talk about the car like that, she might get offended." Maria walked home contentedly. She knew her mother wouldn't object to sending the children away somewhere. However, Laura caused a scene, she didn't want to part with her friends. On the contrary, David was pleased, after all, he wouldn't have to go to school anymore. "Don't get too excited, David," Maria said. "You'll come back and have to take all your subjects externally. So take your textbooks with you." It was very hard for Maria to part with the little twins and little Dorotea, and she didn't want to let go of the troublemaker, Pablo, either. But it was most difficult to say goodbye to Gabriela, and she didn't want to part with her sister either. "I'm not going," Gabriela firmly stated, crossing her arms over her chest. "You're going, Gabriela, we have to leave," Maria begged. "No, I'm not going." This was the first time Gabriela had shown such defiance. She cried and refused to collect her things, and at the very last moment, she ran away. Maria was very angry with her, especially since the other children, watching their sister, started acting up too. But time was running out. Pancho had to return, he needed to hurry. It gets dark early, and the road through the forest is long. "All right, long farewells lead to unnecessary tears," Nora said. "Get in the car, and don't disgrace me there." She instructed the children. "You too," Laura muttered. The old orange car, packed with children, grumbled unhappily and rolled along the bumpy road. Maria waved goodbye, and tears streamed down her face. Gabriela didn't go this time, and little Fernando stayed with his mother. She felt sorry for them. What would happen next? Gabriela returned in the evening, red-eyed and guilty. The joyful Michaela and the stern Maria greeted her. The former happily hopped around, while the latter remained gloomy and silent. "Maria, forgive me, little sister. I won't do that again. Gabriella sobbed. Are you hungry? Cold? Come on, we'll have dinner and warm up. Oh, how silly you are, Gabriella, Maria said in a conciliatory tone, and her little sister calmed down. They had dinner, watched a bit of TV with their mother, and played with Fernando. Then it was decided to go to bed. Maria couldn't sleep again. She was worried about the kids, wondering if they had arrived safely and if everything was okay. She had no idea who this Estefania woman was, the one she had sent her little brothers and sisters to. But she didn't see any other option right now. All she wanted at the moment was to protect her family. This night turned out to be sleepless again. Maria tossed and turned, and her mother even started snoring. She had probably been drinking during the night. And when Fernando started crying, Maria realized that she wouldn't be getting any sleep tonight. As soon as dawn broke, she rushed to Pancho's place to find out how everything had gone. His wife met him, and she had advised them to take the children to his sister the day before. He's sleeping, Maria, he's exhausted. The car broke down on the way back, too. But the kids arrived safely. Estefania was surprised, of course, but for her, there are no strangers' children. You can trust me, neither Laura, nor David, nor Pablo will get sick there. They'll work like champs. You won't recognize them, and the neighbors will look after the little ones. It brings them joy, and the kids get care. You should go and get some sleep. Look how tired you are. Thank you very much. You've helped me so much. Maria smiled. Go on now. You still need to figure out what to do with the others. Maria immediately became sad. Yes, what to do? She spent the entire remaining day thinking but couldn't come up with a solution. Nora felt even more at ease without the children. She brightened up and even managed to be seen talking to a new acquaintance at the store. By evening, Maria was so exhausted that she could barely stand deciding to go to bed early. She asked Gabriella to take care of Fernando at night if Nora overslept. Then, just as her cheek touched the pillow, she fell into a deep sleep. Gabriella, stop it. Maria grumbled in her sleep, but her sister continued to tug at the hem of her long sleeve, in which she was sleeping. I asked you to check on Fernando yourself. I'm tired. Maria mumbled, too weary to open her eyes after 2 sleepless nights. In response, Gabriella growled and bit Maria's wrist, causing her to cry out in pain and immediately jump up. Everything was like a fog, and there was an unusual smell in the air. Maria shook her head and heard barking. It wasn't Gabriella at all, it was Michaela. The dog was fussing around and beckoning somewhere. Maria was disoriented by what was happening. She couldn't break free from the embrace of sleep and return to reality, where something strange was going on. What's happening? Am I asleep? Maria couldn't understand. Suddenly, a switch seemed to flip in her mind, and Maria woke up. Fire! Rushing into the room, she grabbed Fernando from the crib and, coughing, started to wrap him up. Gabriella. Mom. Fire. There's fire in the house. Mom. But no one responded. Fernando woke up and started crying. Maria continued to wrap him up in everything she could find, covering him with a large blanket. Gabriella. Mom. Maria shouted as loud as she could. Gabriella wasn't in her bed. Michaela barked again, and Maria rushed to the room where the boys used to sleep. Maria, I'm here, she heard a quiet voice coming from under the bed. Gabriella, get out quickly, we're on fire. Maria yelled. I can't, I'm scared. Gabriella cried. Leave it for later, put on anything you can find, it's cold outside. Wrap yourself up and run to the exit. Where's Mom? I don't know, Gabriella squeaked. Maria helped her sister put on whatever clothes she could find and grabbed a towel on the way. Here, breathe through this and crouch down. Come on, hurry up. Bending down low, the girls rushed out of the house. Michaela faithfully trotted behind them, wagging her tail. Her intelligent eyes seemed to ask, "Am I a good dog?" When Maria took a breath of fresh air, she coughed. Looking up, she saw that the house was engulfed in flames. Panic and terror gripped her. It was not as scary inside as it was outside. "Help! Help!" she yelled hoarsely. But no one responded. After handing the bundled up Gabriella and a frightened Fernando inside, Maria headed towards the house. "Where are you going?" Gabriella asked. "Stay here, and I'll go find Mom," Maria said. Gabriella obediently stood there, crying softly, while Maria stepped into the doorway, from which smoke was billowing. "Mom! Mom!" she shouted, but no one answered. Maria realized that her mother was in the far wing of the house, but she couldn't reach it. The fire had engulfed the corridor leading to it and the door. Rushing back outside, Maria decided to reach her mother through a window. As she circled the house, she saw that the window was shattered, and inside, the fire was raging. She couldn't see what was happening to Nora. "Mom!" she screamed in desperation, but no one responded. The young woman, who had been wearing only a long t-shirt and hadn't noticed the cold due to shock, ran to the neighbors. Nora's house was somewhat isolated, so the neighbors hadn't noticed the fire. Maria woke them up with loud shouts and banging on their door, pleading for help. They needed to call the fire department. A sturdy man in his mid-30s from the neighboring house told his wife and children to stay home and quickly got dressed, heading towards the burning house. His wife, who had already called the fire department, gave Maria some clothes. "Put these on, you'll freeze," she said. Maria couldn't remember how she managed to put on clothes that were too big for her figure. She was trembling and crying. After dressing, she ran back to her own house. "We need to wake up the villagers," the neighbor told her as he returned. "Let them try to put out the fire with whatever they have." Maria began knocking on every gate and shouting, "Fire! Fire!" The villagers rushed out, initially thinking that the fire was at their homes. When they realized Nora's house was burning, they ran back inside to get dressed and arm themselves with whatever tools they could find to fight the flames. Despite their efforts, they couldn't control the fire. Maria only regained her senses by morning, when the house had turned into ashes. The fire department had arrived, but it was too late to save the house or Nora. In Maria's head, the phrase she overheard from the neighbors during their collective efforts to extinguish the fire kept replaying. So, it's unclear if the house caught fire on its own or if someone with a grudge set it on fire. Looks like the latter. Nora's eldest, the one who got locked up, owed someone, they say. Everything that had happened made Maria freeze. She didn't immediately realize that Gabriella was embracing her, sobbing, and that faithful Michaela was pressing against her legs. She came back to herself at the sound of the neighbor's voice. The neighbor's wife was holding Fernando, wrapped in a blanket. "We need to feed the little one. Let's go to my place. I'll send my husband to the store for formula. And you girls, I'll feed you too." For the time being, the orphan girls were accommodated in a dormitory room in one of the few three-story buildings in the village. After Nora's funeral, Maria went to Pancho for advice. "Pancho, you mentioned that your sister lives in the capital. Can you contact her and ask if she can take us in? I'm afraid to stay here. They burned down our house, and we're still alive. They might come back for us." "Yes," the old man said. "That's entirely possible. Here's what you should do. Pack your things, and I'll take you, Gabriella, and Fernando. It's a long journey, so we'll leave at dawn." "And will your sister accept us?" Maria asked cautiously. "Of course, she will. What else would she do?" Pancho replied. "Just don't tell anyone where you're going, or the troublemakers might find you in the capital." Maria had very few belongings. Compassionate neighbors had brought some things for the baby and Gabriella. Maria had only jeans, a worn sweater, and an old men's jacket 3 sizes too big. She didn't even have tights, despite the cold season. But all she wanted right now was to escape to the capital, far away from these inhuman people who had burned down her home and nearly harmed her sister and brother. Maria had never been to the capital, and she was a little afraid. She knew it was a huge metropolis, nothing like the small town where she had gone to pick up her mother from the maternity ward in the summer. She had no money, no belongings, no place to stay, and absolutely no plans for the future. But she knew she had a strong desire to work. She was ready to toil day and night to provide for her large family. At the appointed time, Pancho was waiting for them by the car. "And what about this one?" he exclaimed in disbelief, nodding towards Michaela, whom Gabriella was leading on an old leash. "She can't go with us," he added. "No, Pancho," Maria firmly replied. "She's our savior. If it weren't for her, we would all have perished. I won't leave her." "You can leave her with me. I'll take care of her." Pancho waved his hand. "No," Gabriella responded with the same determination as her sister. "You'll put her on a leash if you want, so she stays with us. We'll find her a kennel in the capital." "What kennel?" "Never mind. Get in already, all of you." Pancho spat and jumped behind the wheel. As usual, they first coaxed the car to start without any surprises. When it finally reluctantly roared to life, they crossed their fingers to overcome the challenging road ahead. Driving such a long distance in an uncomfortable car with a small child was no easy feat. Fernando was being fussy, and Maria was on edge. Gabriella tried to calm both of them down, and Michaela pretended she wasn't even there, transforming into a fluffy mat on the floor. Who knew? What if they suddenly dropped her off in unfamiliar places? When they finally arrived in the capital, Maria's jaw dropped in amazement, and Gabriella was equally impressed. They had never seen anything like it. Everything was enormous and extraordinary. Even the ordinary old neighborhood where Pancho's sister, Tina, lived seemed like a fairy tale place to Maria. Tina, an elderly woman who looked older than her brother, greeted the girls warmly. "Come in, my dears, come in. Oh, and you brought the dog too? We can't have her here, but we'll figure something out." The elderly woman hugged Pancho and seated everyone at the table for coffee. Her room was tiny, with a shared kitchen for 4 apartments. Tina's room only had a couch, a small wall unit, a wardrobe across the room, and in the corner, a corner with a sink, a small refrigerator, and some dishes. Where are we all going to live? Maria thought with horror. Tina seemed to read her thoughts. Maria, don't worry. I've thought it through. I already told everyone here that fire victims are coming to stay with me. I consulted with some smart people on what to do. We have a small storeroom, like a caretaker's room. We cleaned it up yesterday. The neighbors brought a bed, a good mattress, a crib for the baby, an electric stove, and various other things. There's a toilet and a shower. It's like a real apartment. It's warm and cozy. It's only 11 square meters. Live here until a better option comes along. But you'll need to work as a janitor and get up early. It's not an easy job, but it's good for you right now. Pancho said you don't have any documents yet. No, I'm in the process of getting them, Maria sighed. Well, here, we take that seriously. But don't worry, the people here are simple and kind-hearted. They'll support you all the way, especially if you keep the courtyard in good shape. It can get slippery, and our elderly folks have trouble walking. Sprinkle some sand on the path, and they'll carry you on their hands. When Maria saw their new home, she breathed a sigh of relief. It was even better than she had imagined. A cozy little room, and everyone would fit. Though they didn't know the orphans personally, the neighbors had brought enough groceries, including baby food. Warm clothing and various little things were also provided. True, the walls needed painting, the ceiling had stains, and the wooden floor creaked. There was even a hole in the corner, which could be dangerous as the baby grew. But that wasn't a problem. She would move out by then. She had to get her other siblings out of there. Good people live here, Maria thought gratefully. For Fernando, there was a crib with bars that took up a lot of space, but it was comfortable for the baby. The girls had a large iron bed for two. Maria set an alarm for 6:30 in the morning. She didn't want to oversleep on her first day of work. She needed to ensure that the building's residents wouldn't regret accepting her as a janitor. Getting up in the morning was tough. After drinking strong coffee with sugar, Maria wrapped herself in a warm scarf, put on the felt boots that Tina had given her for work, and grabbed a shovel. It was still dark outside, and the snow glistened in the glow of the streetlights. There wasn't much snow, but the pathways had already iced over. Maria approached her work with a sense of responsibility. She chipped away at the ice, cleared away trash, shoveled snow, and sprinkled sand on the pathways. The cheerful Michaela was constantly by her side. Sometimes the dog would wander off to explore something interesting but would return to check on her owner, making sure she was doing her duties well. When the work was finished, Maria surveyed the area with a critical eye and concluded that the job was done excellently. Returning home, she realized just how exhausted she was. She had no energy left. "Don't worry, I'll get used to it," Maria reassured herself. Indeed, with each passing day, she became more accustomed to her new job. However, money was in short supply, so Maria took on additional work cleaning staircases in apartment buildings. "Maria, you're so beautiful. It's not right for you to be wielding a broom or a mop," Tina remarked one day. "Right now, everyone needs to work, even the beautiful ones," Maria sighed. "You're absolutely right," the elderly woman agreed. "And you're doing great, my dear girl. But let me give you some advice. With your looks, you should aim higher. You could work as a secretary somewhere. Making coffee doesn't require much skill, but it's a whole different level of work and pay. Or maybe you could find a job in a store selling beautiful clothes. But in that coat with a broom, you'll lose your beauty in no time." "But who would hire me, Tina? I don't have any documents," Maria said with a sigh. "That's true, you're a bit of a legal bug without those papers. But here's what I suggest. While your documents aren't ready, look for a new place for yourself. You should find it out. But what about my janitor's room? Don't worry about that. No one's going to take it from you, even if you stop maintaining the courtyard." Maria decided to follow Tina's advice and started looking for a job. She felt very uncomfortable among the city's residents. She was also afraid of being stopped on the street and asked for documents. However, things went smoothly, although she couldn't find a job. Maria responded to ads posted on doors and checked addresses listed in newspapers. But due to her lack of documents, she was turned away everywhere. She was looking for it practically every day, leaving her faithful helper Gabriella at home, who, instead of going to school, cared for her younger brother. Maria pledged to herself that she would find a way to get Gabriella back into school, as well as her other brothers and sisters. Pancho called and explained that they had found a teacher in the village of Estefania who had moved to the remote area in her old age. She was teaching the children, but it wasn't enough for the older ones. Valerio had already missed out, and the same fate could await the others. Maria couldn't find a job for herself by New Year's, which left her feeling disappointed. However, they managed to have a joyful holiday. Kind neighbors gifted them a small Christmas tree with ornaments since a large one wouldn't fit in their storage room. They also brought sweets and mandarins. But Maria also took it upon herself to make gifts for her younger brother and sister. For Fernando, she crocheted a toy filled with wooden balls, something for him to play with. Gabriella received a drawing set and a book about animals, as her little sister loved these things. Gabriella didn't sit idle either. She prepared a beautiful card for Maria and decorated the storage room with handmade garlands and snowflakes. They didn't have a TV, so they listened to the radio and enjoyed a delicious pie Tina had baked. Maria was pleased to see Gabriella so happy. She had been sad for a long time, missing her mother and their large family. But now she had thawed, calmed down, and was even smiling. At midnight, they went to watch the fireworks. What a sight it was! The girls had never seen anything like it in person. The richness of colors, the golden showers, it was all mesmerizing. Only Michaela wasn't pleased. She had curled up under the bed and whimpered softly, tormented by the sounds of exploding fireworks. Gabriella felt sorry for the dog and went to her to provide comfort. Maria followed. However, as soon as the girls opened the door, they heard a loud crack nearby, immediately followed by a loud bang. Michaela couldn't take it anymore. The mixed-breed dog whimpered and rushed out onto the street, almost knocking the girls over. "Michaela! Michaela!" Maria and Gabriella shouted and ran after the runaway dog. But it wasn't that simple. Michaela sprinted away as fast as a purebred greyhound, her hind legs outpacing the front ones, her tongue lolling to the side, and her long ears flopping backward. The dog was gone so quickly that the sisters couldn't catch her, nor could they figure out where she had disappeared. "Take care of Fernando, and I'll look for her," Maria said, handing Gabriella the keys, and then she set off in pursuit of Michaela. "Michaela! Michaela!" Maria called as she wandered through the New Year's streets, illuminated by garlands and twinkling windows, from which joyful music and the voices of celebrants echoed. The dog's trail had disappeared, but Maria didn't give up and continued to call for her. She roamed for an entire hour, but there was no sign of Michaela. "Maybe she's hiding and will come home on her own tomorrow. She just needs to avoid getting hit by a car," Maria thought as she made her way back to their lodging. It was a sad morning to wake up without Michaela. She had always been underfoot, wagging her fluffy ringed tail. Cleaning snow on the street wasn't as enjoyable without her. Gabriella hadn't slept all night. She was worried. The festive mood had completely disappeared. "Gabriella, my dear, don't worry. I'll take a break from work and go look for Michaela again," Maria promised her sister during breakfast. But the latest search didn't yield any results. Maria felt very sad. Her Michaela, the rescuer and faithful four-legged friend, was lost. Sitting on a bench, Maria contemplated while gazing at the festive coffee stand decorated for the new year. She was cold, and she would have loved a cup of hot coffee. However, she didn't have money for such luxuries. "The cost of a cup of coffee could feed me for a month," she mumbled to herself, turning away and trying to shift her nose to the sense of the crisp winter air rather than the coffee chocolate symphony wafting from the stand. Suddenly, the enticing aroma was right in front of her. Maria turned around and saw a large paper cup with a New Year's ornament on it. The cup was sealed with a lid, and steam was rising from it. "Are you freezing, miss? Here, warm up." "Don't worry, it was just brewed," a friendly young man said, offering Maria the coffee. In his other hand, he held another cup, and as Maria reluctantly accepted the treat, he sat down next to her and took a sip from his own cup. Not bad. They make good coffee here. It's especially pleasant to have it in the winter, with such a lovely girl nearby." "I'm Milenio, by the way, and you?" he asked. Maria replied timidly. "Maria. You're quite shy, Maria. Haven't you met people on the street before?" "You're such a beauty," the young man smiled. He appeared to be around 25, wore rectangular glasses, and was modestly yet tastefully dressed. "I'm sorry, but I'm new to the capital, and I'm not used to being around people," Maria attempted to explain herself, but still didn't dare to try her drink. "I see. Well, I've lived here my whole life, but I, too, am not accustomed to people, you know. Besides, I usually don't approach girls, especially on the street. But you've really caught my eye. And Maria, I have a feeling that something has happened to you. I might be just the person who can help you. Am I right?" He smiled again. He exuded trustworthiness, and after taking a sip of the coffee and acknowledging its divine taste, Maria finally responded. "I've lost my dog." "What?" The young man didn't understand. Yes, my dog. Her name is Michaela. She ran away on New Year's Eve, frightened by the fireworks. I've been looking for her everywhere, but she's gone," Maria lamented. The sadness in Maria's voice over her lost pet touched the young man's heart. "Don't worry, Maria. Let's look for your dog together. I think I know where she might be," he said. "Really?" Maria's face brightened. Yes, over there is my car. I'll drive you. Don't worry, I won't take you anywhere else, Melanio reassured her when he noticed her hesitance. Maria continued holding the coffee cup and sipping it slowly, trying to regain her trust. Maria, please believe me, I won't take you anywhere. We'll just find your dog, and that's it. I have a couple of ideas, he added. Melanio's car wasn't new, but it was certainly in better shape than Pancho's old vehicle, which Maria had occasionally ridden in. Where are we going? Maria asked while still savoring her coffee as slowly as possible. We're heading to the municipal shelter. I think we should go to the one closest to us, Melanio replied. However, their trip to the shelter didn't yield any results. Michaela wasn't there. I can give you an address, said one of the shelter employees. Dogs were brought there this morning, but we're currently out of space. With the address written on a scrap of paper and a heart full of anticipation, Maria sat back in the passenger seat next to Melanio. Well, let's go. Maria's happiness knew no bounds when Michaela was indeed found at the new shelter. But the happiest of all was Michaela herself. She danced, her ears pressed back, and her tail wagged so vigorously it seemed it might detach. Michaela! I'm so happy! Maria exclaimed, tears streaming down her face as the delighted Michaela licked her nose. I'm so glad you found your dog, Melanio said. Well, let me take you back home. We've come quite a distance. Maria agreed, eager to see Gabriella's reaction to the return of their missing dog. Maybe I can have a coffee at your place? Melanio asked when they arrived at the janitor's place. Oh, Melanio, I'm embarrassed. Our room is tiny, and my sister and brother are there too. It's awkward, Maria said. No worries. Melanio smiled, mentally scolding himself for putting Maria in an uncomfortable situation. Then I invite you to a cafe today. Oh, could we make it tomorrow? Today is really not convenient for me, Maria suggested. All right, tomorrow it is. I'll pick you up in the evening, Melanio promised, delighted that Maria agreed to go on a date with him. Maria went home, and Melanio stayed in the yard for a while. He could hear joyful exclamations coming from the caretaker's place. Gabriella couldn't contain her happiness upon reuniting with her beloved Michaela. The following evening, Melanio and Maria went to a cafe. Maria didn't have anything special to wear, but even in simple jeans and an oversized sweater, she could easily outshine the city's beauties. Maria resembled a beautiful and delicate flower wrapped in a cheap newspaper. Holding a bouquet in her hands, Maria felt even more awkward, thinking she didn't match the flowers, the cozy cafe atmosphere, or her new acquaintance. Melanio shared a bit about himself, mentioning that he was a mathematician and physicist engaged in scientific work. He didn't earn much, but it was enough to make ends meet. Maria, on the other hand, opened up to Melanio and shared everything about herself and her difficult life. She told him about her market trading, her wayward mother, the fire, Valerio, her siblings, and everything else. Melanio listened, his mouth agape, thinking, what a life this girl has had. At the end of her story, Maria became emotional and even shed a tear. Don't worry, Maria, Melanio said, covering her hand with his. Life can throw all sorts of challenges at us, but you're on the right path. You can rebuild your life brick by brick. Maria and Melanio began seeing each other every day, and these were Maria's first real romantic experiences. Melanio noticed that he was falling more in love with this beautiful girl with each passing day. However, Maria was afraid to dive headfirst into a relationship, given her mother's experiences, believing that men would bring her nothing but trouble. One day, a neighbor told Maria that her acquaintance had resigned from her position as an office manager at a law firm and that Maria could try to get a job there. Oh, come on. Maria waved her hand dismissively. Me, a manager? In response, the neighbor chuckled. Don't let the title fool you, it's just a fancy name. All you need to do is sweep and neatly stack papers. Basically, it's just a vacancy of a janitor. But the salary is good. My acquaintance only left because she found a place closer to home with the same terms. Thank you, I'll go. Maria exclaimed happily. Hurry up before they post the job ad or competitors might rush in. Go there today, advised the neighbor. Maria headed to the given address. It took her a while, but eventually she found the place. The office was located on the ground floor of one of the buildings. The grand porch impressed Maria, and the interior design left her even more in awe. At first, she thought about leaving without trying her luck. But then, she gathered her thoughts, remembered how much she had spent on the subway, and decided to see it through. Offices were on both her right and left sides. There were no walls, just glass partitions, and Maria pondered which way to go, right or left. On both sides, tables were occupied by attractive women in business attire. Suddenly, Maria noticed that one of the women in the office on the left had noticed her and smiled. Maria decided that she would enter that office. Hello, the woman greeted her before Maria could even open the door. Do you have an appointment? No, Maria replied quietly. And what do you want? The woman inquired. I need to see the director. Do you mean our chief lawyer? Well, he's also our director. But he doesn't see anyone without an appointment. Maybe I can help you. Or you can schedule an appointment, and I'll inform you of the time. The woman smiled again and pointed to a chair. Please, have a seat. Maria awkwardly sat on the edge of the chair. She was completely flustered and couldn't figure out how to ask for a job. Moreover, the silly word office manager had slipped her mind. I'm here about a job, Maria timidly began. A job? That's surprising, the woman said. We weren't actually looking for anyone, it seems. I mean, for the position of a janitor, Maria clarified. Oh, yes, of course. The woman realized. We do need someone like that. Otherwise, I had to mop the floor before work today. Can you imagine? Yes, a janitor is a valuable person. The colleague sitting at the nearby desk said. Before that, she was quiet and going through some papers. You can discuss this with me. There's no need to bother Alejandro, the first girl sighed, looking at the door with a strange tenderness, where a golden sign with large letters that read attorney proudly hung. Do you have any experience? She continued, addressing Maria. I do, but I haven't cleaned in offices before, Maria replied. Well, it's not difficult work. Let me make a copy of your documents, and we'll call you tomorrow. Are you of legal age? You look so slender and young. Upon hearing these words, the second girl at the table smirked mockingly and continued digging through her papers. Yes, I just turned 18, Maria answered. I don't have my documents yet. They were destroyed and haven't been replaced. Oh, we absolutely require documents. We're very strict about that, as you can understand. Our office is quite serious. You might want to try a store or a roadside cafe. They often hire without documents. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. It's okay, Maria said, getting up from her chair. I'm sorry to have bothered you. Don't worry. The girl tried to cheer her up, seeing how disappointed the visitor had become. Maria stood up and was about to leave when suddenly the beautiful door with the golden sign swung open and a man in a business suit in his 30s emerged. Girls, I'll be in the conference room for an hour and a half. I'll be back after 3, as usual, the man announced cheerfully. He was clearly pleased with himself and didn't notice Maria, nearly knocking her over. Excuse me, he exclaimed, catching the girl by the arm. Are you here to see me? No, Alejandro, she was applying for a job, but she's leaving now, the girl casually remarked. Is that so? I had a completely different image of a cleaning lady. Lucretia, did you hire her? The boss playfully inquired. No, of course not, the girl shrugged. She doesn't have any documents. Oh, I see. Without documents, it's not possible, Alejandro lamented. I'm sorry, Maria squeaked and freed her hand, which the lawyer was still holding. The girl was standing there, taken aback by the imposing, well-groomed man who resembled a pedigreed house cat fed exclusively with beef mince. She turned to leave, but he grabbed her elbow again. "Wait," he said, and the girls raised their eyebrows in surprise, wondering what would happen next. "What's your name?" the man asked. "Maria," the girl stammered. "Come with me, Maria, I'll escort you, and on the way, you can tell me what happened to your documents." Maria obediently followed the director. Her back burned under the intense stares of the girls in the glass offices. "So, what happened?" the lawyer persisted. "Oh, it's a long story," Maria sighed. "We're not in a hurry," the man said with a dazzling smile. "Where do you live? I'll give you a ride, and you can tell me on the way." Maria felt awkward about both agreeing and refusing. But the man's tone brooked no objections, so she quietly headed to the car. During the ride, Maria told him about her life, much like she had recently told Melanio. She had nothing to hide, and she didn't want to start a new acquaintance with omissions. Alejandro listened to Maria's story without interruption. "Here's the thing," he said in a serious tone when the girl finished her narrative. "Come to work tomorrow. We'll expedite the document process. After all, we're a law firm. So, don't worry. And here," he said, handing her a couple of bills. "Consider it in advance. It's for your commute to work and for small expenses until your first paycheck." As Maria got out of the car, he called after her. "Don't forget to clean my office thoroughly tomorrow. I like it when it's clean. Got it?" He winked at the girl and drove away. And she remained standing there, bewildered yet simultaneously inspired. Maria told Melanio that she had found a job. "Another one?" the boy exclaimed in surprise. "Well, what can I do?" "We need the money," Maria shrugged. "I understand. But leave the most lucrative one and think about your education. You need to study, to pursue something," he advised. "Oh, there's no time for that now. The most important thing for me is that Gabriella gets an education, and we need to find a place for Fernando in a kindergarten," Maria replied. Melanio fell silent. Maria knew she couldn't ask him for more money. He had already helped them enough. He had brought them a small but decent refrigerator that ran quietly, unlike their previous one, which had been roaring loudly throughout the room. Melanio had also put up wallpaper and fixed the floor. What more could he do for them? So, Maria understood that she would have to make her own way in life. She had no plans to rely on a happy marriage like her mother had. The next day, after cleaning the yard and tidying herself up, Maria headed to her new job. The girls in the glass offices greeted her with a cold attitude, but Maria wasn't bothered by it. She was used to being treated with prejudice. She had never been liked or accepted in groups. Besides, she came here to work, not to make friends. The girl, whom she had learned was named Lucretia, explained Maria's new responsibilities. The second girl didn't see fit to introduce herself. Two others from the neighboring office didn't even bother to look at the young cleaning lady. Was it worth paying attention to the service staff? But in the end, Maria had to notice when Alejandro, with a broad smile, invited her to clean his office, and he didn't leave it himself. He simply requested, "Natalia, 2 coffees, please." The tall girl with bright red lipstick on her lips was briefly speechless. "What? How?" Alejandro secluded himself in his office and even asked for coffee from her. She was a lawyer by education and was making coffee for some cleaning lady. What a shame. But there was nothing to be done. She had to obey. Natalia was even more outraged when she saw that the girl was sitting at the desk in front of the boss and smiling so widely that even the dimples on her cheeks were visible. "What charming dimples!" Alejandro purred, smiling at Maria. Upon hearing these words, Natalia wanted to spill both cups of hot coffee on the cleaning lady, but she restrained herself. Catching her gaze, Maria understood that she wouldn't be welcome here. "Maria, don't clean my office today. Natalia or Lucretia will do it. You look tired, and I'll give you a ride home, okay? Alejandro said when the door closed behind Natalia. It's a bit awkward, the girl blushed. No worries at all, the director smiled. I have business in your district anyway. Maria understood that her boss was flirting with her but decided not to resist it. She enjoyed the attention from someone like him and allowed him to court her. Not every day, but very often, the boss would drive her home, and one day Melanio saw it. He also came to see Maria, but Gabriella told him that her sister hadn't returned from work yet and offered to wait. However, Melanio decided to go to Maria's workplace and pick her up himself. Arriving at the address, he coincidentally witnessed the moment when Maria was leaving with a well-dressed, tall man. They were laughing. Maria was wearing a simple red jacket that Melanio had given her a couple of weeks ago, while the man was wearing an expensive coat. Melanio clenched his teeth and gripped the steering wheel. She's just like all the others, was echoing in his mind. Just like all of them. Maria didn't notice Melanio's car. She got into the boss's car, and they drove away. Melanio stayed behind, processing the emotions from what he had just witnessed. His car was much more modest. He didn't have that imposing appearance, an expensive coat, or a luxurious suit. Adjusting his glasses on his nose, he sighed and made the difficult decision to stop seeing Maria. After that incident, Maria tried calling Melanio, but he didn't answer. Initially, the girl was very upset and couldn't sleep for a couple of nights. But then, remembering how her mother's passions had led her astray, she slapped her hand on the table and promised not to dwell on the missing friend. Besides, she now had another man on her mind. Alejandro showered her with attention, candy, chocolates, and small gifts. Once, he even gave her a simple gold pendant. But most importantly, he got her the necessary documents. A huge weight lifted off Maria's shoulders. After this, she realized that she had fallen in love. Alejandro never invited Maria to his home. Their encounters took place in his office after the other employees had left for the day. Several times, the lawyer arranged meetings in a hotel room. Maria's head was spinning from all of this. She could never have imagined such a luxurious life. One day, Maria even allowed herself to believe that they would get married and take her siblings in. They would live as a large, happy family. However, Maria still missed Melanio. He always cared about her family, asking about Valerio in prison and the children in the village. He would bring sweets for Gabriella and buy diapers for Fernando. Alejandro, on the other hand, gave Maria the impression that he didn't want anything to do with her troubled family. But Maria didn't take it literally. She believed that Alejandro simply wasn't ready yet and that he would soften later. He would see her brothers and sisters, sympathize, and help. After all, he wouldn't abandon them, would he? He couldn't do what her mother's suitors had done. Spring arrived with the sun shining in the sky, tree buds swelling, and small streams flowing along the sidewalks, washing away the remnants of winter from the streets. Maria also blossomed. She began dressing better, but she never allowed herself to become extravagant. Alejandro took her to salons and gifted her perfumes and cosmetics. The country girl transformed, though she still lacked the ability to add an air of luxury to herself. In her relationship with Alejandro, there was no progress. Maria was still not acquainted with his parents or relatives. She had never been to his home. Furthermore, she still worked as a cleaner in his office. This began to concern her. Could a real man not make his beloved's life easier? He had professed his love and spoke beautiful words, unlike Melanio, who had never said he loved her. However, Melanio insisted on her education, thinking about her future. Alejandro, on the other hand, seemed content with her lack of education and her status as a simple cleaner. Moreover, Alejandro occasionally ridiculed her lack of education, as well as her lack of life experience and her provincial background. She felt uncomfortable in shopping malls, didn't know brand names, and made funny mistakes. "My dear, sometimes there's just nothing to talk about with you. What have you even seen in your life, my poor girl?" sighed Alejandro. Maria felt bitter about his words, but she couldn't argue because she depended on Alejandro both morally and financially. She believed that such a splendid man had the right to criticize Cinderella from a tiny village, the daughter of an alcoholic. What could she hope for, anyway? Over time, Maria began to notice that Alejandro had cooled off toward her. The office girls seemed to look at her strangely, as if they were mocking her. Maria interpreted it as ridicule about the fact that the director's lover had to wield a mop. But it turned out to be much worse. Alejandro stopped giving Maria a ride home after a young intern joined their firm. She was someone's acquaintance of Alejandro's and possessed everything that Maria lacked. She had manners, education, and metropolitan sophistication. Although Maria was much kinder than this girl, she seemed like a simpleton next to her. The girl, Marina, would wear revealing necklines and extremely short skirts to work. She would sigh Alejandro's name and constantly seek his advice. A mysterious smile played on her plump lips, painted with red lipstick, and the trail of expensive perfume was enticing. It was no surprise that one day Maria caught Alejandro in a passionate embrace with the intern in his car. The infuriated girl knocked on the window loudly, but the lovebirds didn't separate immediately. Alejandro rolled his eyes and reluctantly got out of the car, while Marina began adjusting her makeup, attempting to conceal her satisfied smile. "What is this? What's going on?" Maria exclaimed, pointing towards her boss's new lover. "Don't shout at me," Alejandro hissed. "You're not in your village, don't forget that." Maria exhaled and tried to ask calmly, "Please, explain to me what's going on. And who are you to demand an explanation from me? You're not my wife, you're just a cleaner. You've taken advantage of my kindness, and now you're getting too comfortable." Alejandro responded indignantly. "What?" Maria gasped. "You heard what I've said. You mean nothing to me, got it? I had no plans for you. You're fired, so get out of here. And don't ever show up here again, you crazy troublemaker." Maria didn't know what to say. Everything had been fine just yesterday. What had suddenly happened? She burst into tears and grabbed Alejandro's hand. "Alejandro, what is this? What did I do wrong? Please tell me. Get out of here, you hysterical woman, before I report you to the police. Leave." Marina stepped out of the car. Lazily chewing gum, she spoke in her velvety chestnut voice. "Alejandro, we have a meeting with a client in 10 minutes. Let's go." "Yes, Marina, let's go," he said, heading towards the office, holding his assistant by the waist. Maria was overcome with terror. Her world was collapsing. She couldn't live without Alejandro. She would die. I'm pregnant," she shouted after the sweet couple walked away. In response, Marina and Alejandro froze for a couple of seconds, but they quickly regained their composure. Marina burst into mocking laughter, and Alejandro said, "Well, that's just like you, all about breeding like rabbits, you beggars. I don't need a child, and you won't force it on me. I won't acknowledge it, I'm warning you now. You'll be a single mother collecting welfare. That's how you people make a living. And if you don't want to ruin your life, go to the hospital while it's not too late." With her head down, Maria walked towards the subway. She was choking back tears and didn't know how to cope with this betrayal. "Pull yourself together and stop whining," she scolded herself. "Look at you, wanting a fairy tale. Fairy tales won't happen to you, return to the real world." The only thing Maria could find solace in at the moment was that she wasn't actually pregnant. She had said it out of anger and helplessness. Maria would never have children out of wedlock. She had seen the consequences in her mother's life. No, Maria vowed that things would be different for her. Returning home and looking at the wallpaper that Melanio had put up, Maria sighed. "Today, I'll cry," she told herself, "and tomorrow I'll start looking for work." As planned, Maria spent the rest of the day in tears, and the next morning, she set out to find a job. She now had the necessary documents, but she lacked experience, and she needed money urgently since Alejandro wouldn't pay her for the last month of work. She had to pick up the broom again. Well, any job is good if it's honest, Maria thought. However, what bothered her was that the opportunity to bring her siblings from the village would be postponed indefinitely. Part of her salary went to Estefania, part to Valerio for sending packages, and the rest was for her life in the capital with her sister and brother. I need to find a new job as soon as possible, Maria thought. But soon, a tragedy occurred that overshadowed the pain of losing her fiancé and job. One night, Maria heard strange wheezing sounds. Jumping out of bed, she found Fernando struggling to breathe. She picked him up, but she didn't understand what was happening. Gabriela! Gabriela! She shouted. Wake up, Gabriela! Something's wrong with Fernando. I'm calling an ambulance, and you pack his things. Gabriela jumped up like a soldier and began throwing everything into a bag without sorting. Meanwhile, Maria called an ambulance, which, fortunately, arrived instantly. They took the baby to the hospital, and Maria and Gabriela went with him, leaving Michaela, who stayed home, clearly sensing that something terrible had happened. How could you overlook a heart defect? You didn't take the child to the doctor at all? Scolded Maria after Fernando was examined by the stern doctor. The baby was in the intensive care unit, and they wouldn't let his sisters see him. Maria mentally cursed herself 1,000,000 times for missing the illness. She had even bragged about how healthy her little brother was, saying that not even a common cold could affect him. We're going to convene an emergency consultation to decide what to do, and we'll let you know. You should take the girl home, you might harm her too, the doctor grumbled. No, Maria, I'm not leaving. I'll stay with you, Gabriela pleaded. They weren't given a room, so they spent the whole night in the corridor. Gabriela would occasionally doze off on her sister's shoulder, while Maria blamed herself repeatedly for what had happened and thought about how things could have been different if she had acted differently. In the morning, they were informed of the consultation results. An urgent operation was required, and it couldn't be delayed. The equipment and specialists were available, but it required a substantial amount of money. Maria didn't have that kind of money. Usually, in such cases, a charitable foundation can help, the doctor informed her. You should contact them. Maria took Gabriela home to eat and get some rest, then went to the foundations whose addresses had been given to her. It turned out that there were quite a few children in need of urgent funds for surgery, and there was a whole queue of them. They promised to organize a collection for Fernando, but in his case, every hour counted. Maria went to the hospital and spent the rest of the day there, sleeping on a couch in the corridor again. In the morning, a nurse woke her up. You need to come. We need your consent for the surgery and your signature. We're taking him to the operating room, the nurse said. What? Maria was surprised. But we haven't paid yet. Maybe you haven't, but someone else did, the nurse smiled. But the amount is huge. Maria couldn't believe it. Oh, don't worry about that right now. The most important thing is for the surgery to go well. Once it's over, we'll find out who paid and why. All the time Fernando was in the operating room, Maria felt on edge. When the doctor finally came out and said that the surgery had been successful, she rushed to hug the surgeon in joy. Only now did she realize that she hadn't eaten or drunk anything all day. They still hadn't let her see Fernando, so Maria went outside to get some fresh air and buy herself some water and a snack. To her surprise, when she stepped out of the clinic's doors, she ran into Melanio. Melanio, is that you? Maria couldn't believe her eyes. Hi, he replied with a smile. How's Fernando? Did the surgery go well? Yes, Melanio, everything's fine. But how do you know about the surgery? Wait, was it you? Did you pay the bill, Melanio? Maria guessed. Come on, Maria, it's no big deal. The important thing is that Fernando is okay. I was really worried about him, he's such a good kid. How did you find out? "Tell me," Maria pleaded, gently taking Melanio's hand. In response, he squeezed her hand and then kissed the tips of her fingers. "I've missed you so much," Melanio whispered. Maria looked at him with wide-open eyes. After a long conversation, she found out that he had been at the same charitable foundation she had visited the day before. He had donated computers to children from underprivileged families and had come to finalize some details. However, Maria had been so distraught that she hadn't even noticed Melanio and had almost knocked him over. He had found out why she had come and paid the bill in the evening. "Maria, you know, I'm actually wealthy. I'm not just a physicist stuck deciphering equations. I'm involved in robotics, and I've already patented some things. I grew up in a poor family. I never had anything, but as soon as I started earning money, I suddenly had friends and girlfriends. However, I soon realized that they were only interested in my money. When I told them I had gone bankrupt, they all disappeared in an instant. That's why I don't flaunt my wealth, as you've noticed. When I saw you with your boss, I thought you were just like everyone else, but I was wrong. You always put your family first, Maria. There are very few people like you. And even if I'm not interesting to you personally, let me at least help you and your family. I'll be happy to be a part of your future. Well, ideally, how about marrying me?" Melanio said, getting down on one knee. It was damp outside, and Melanio's pants quickly soaked, but he paid no attention to it. He took out a blue velvet box, opened it, and revealed a bright ring with a cluster of small gems that glistened brilliantly in the sun. Maria couldn't believe her eyes. Was this a joke? While her mind was racing, her lips were already whispering yes. Before the wedding, Melanio and Maria decided to settle important matters, bringing their children back, obtaining their documents, and enrolling them in daycare and school. It turned out that Estefania had indeed done an excellent job with her responsibilities. The children returned well-groomed and disciplined, having been nourished with homemade milk. Even Nora and David had become quieter and more obedient. Estefania praised them, saying they had helped her with household chores and taught her a lot. It was clear that, although Estefania was strict, the children didn't want to say goodbye to her. Soon, they managed to get Valerio out of the correctional facility by hiring a good lawyer for him. To prevent him from going down the wrong path, they arranged for him to work at an auto repair shop. The owner, Rodrigo, promised to take him under his wing, making sure he worked diligently. He pledged to teach him many skills so he could earn an honest living. Melanio rented a large house for the family, and Maria cried when she saw it. "Why are you crying?" Melanio laughed. "Don't you like it?" "Well, it's temporary. We'll build our own house according to your design." "I love it, I really do," Maria whispered happily. When all the issues with the children were finally settled, they had their wedding. There weren't many guests, but it was a youthful and joyful celebration. Maria pursued her dream of joining the theater, and one day, a producer noticed her. He liked her portrayal of a beautiful provincial girl, and she even appeared in a couple of commercials. After these shoots, another producer noticed her, and Maria fulfilled her dream of walking the catwalk. However, she didn't want to pursue a career as a model or actress. Maria realized that her most important role was being a mother and the keeper of the family hearth. So, when she found out that she was expecting a child, she took a break from her career without hesitation. After giving birth to a beautiful boy, Maria understood that this was a reward for all the years of pain she had endured. 3 years passed. One day, a group of journalists visited Maria and Melanio's home. They were shooting a segment about Melanio, who had made a breakthrough in robotics with a significant invention. Part of the show was dedicated to Melanio's family, especially his wife. The journalists captured the happy family and left to edit their material. Maria couldn't have imagined the pain that this interview would bring to a man living in a panel apartment on the outskirts of the city. On the old linoleum floor next to the sofa where he watched TV, there were numerous beer bottles. He stared at the screen, gripping a plate of salted fish tightly. "Maria, it's you again?" Alejandro had seen Maria before, in advertisements and even in a movie. Each time, it hurt him to see his former cleaning lady, whom he had callously betrayed. "Oh, come on, Maria, don't be angry. The world has already punished me," Alejandro sniffled and reached for a bottle. Taking a sip, he continued enviously. "And look at you living so lavishly. Better than I ever did." After parting ways with Maria, Alejandro married Marina. Despite being an experienced lawyer himself, he underestimated the cunning woman who managed to take his entire firm and leave him with nothing. Losing everything, Alejandro, who wasn't accustomed to fighting for his life, quickly gave in, turned to drinking, and launched himself. Well, everyone got what they deserved. For some, it was a dirty room filled with empty bottles, while for others, it was an ocean of boundless happiness.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.